You're listening to the Hawke Media Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives crush the digital marketing game. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
All right, you're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Rob Ceravolo. How you doing?
Good, Eric. Good to see you, man.
You too.
Long time no see.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about, like, right before the world came to a halt, we got to hang out in Palm Springs. One of the last big events, I'd say I was at.
Which, by the way, was a great event. It was a great event. I remember partying at what were you dressed up as, by the way, in that?
I literally bought a leopard print robe
That's
out of the hotel lobby. They had like a gift shop, but I was like, that's perfect. It was like 80s.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we were talking before, 2020 looked so inspiring and exciting, and everybody was excited for what was going to come in 2020. Then boom, right? But
yeah, we pretty much ended last year with partying to 80s band and then Lenny Kravitz and it was everyone's optimistic. I mean, even at the beginning of this year, I remember I didn't work out, but I tried to jump on one of your planes when we were in Miami. So we'll get into that, but. Yeah. So as I always like to talk about, you've become the CEO and founder of an airline as well as a Topgun pilot. Not too shabby, but I'm curious, rolling back to 4 years old, were you like pushing around in the backyard making airplane sounds saying I'm going to be a pilot one day? Or like, where does this start? Let's take the story from the very beginning.
Funny, man. No, I did. I grew up that way. So
yeah.
When I was a kid, my dad came over from Italy in the 60s. He grew up in Southern Italy. He was actually a teenager during World War II. And he had these, he brought me up, telling me these stories, he had these vivid memories of growing up in World War II, and his town was overrun by fascists and Nazis. And he used to feed salami to the prisoners of war through the fence and everything else, But my uncle was sentenced to die by the local magistrate. I mean, it was crazy, but you can imagine World War II. Yeah. And the American military invaded and basically liberated his town. So, he came to the U.S. and became a citizen and just fell in love with this country. So he brought me up with this idea. I used to watch all these old war movies like Patton and everything else, But he also had this love of flying, and that came from, he remembers the American bombers flying low. He lived on a little mountaintop in Southern Italy and flew over his town, so he became a private pilot. So I would say at 4 years old, I knew I was going to join the military. At 6 years old, I knew I was going to be a fighter pilot.
Wow.
And then, Top Gun came out in 1986, and a little movie called Top Gun. And I said, man, you could ride motorcycles, you could land on boats, and the whole thing. I was like, I gotta be a Navy pilot. Screw this Air Force stuff, and fell in love with it. And went to college, University of Florida, and I was going to join the Navy right after college, and I had some family things going on at the time, so I delayed a couple of years, and then August 10th, 2001, I was sworn in, and everyone knows what happened a month later. And at that point, I said, man, I knew I was on the right path. Yeah. It's funny. It's so easy to look back sometimes and see how the dots connect and at least where your path takes you. So
and what's interesting about this, so you're literally 4 years old through 18 through 22 when you're graduating college. Like, you knew you were going to be a Navy pilot. You switched from Air Force to Navy after Top Gun, but still you were pretty firm on, I'm going to be a Navy.
There's full disclosure. There was a period of time for about a year where I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Hey, look, Charlie Sheen made it look pretty cool, Michael Biehn. But no, seriously though, my passion was always obviously in flying. So I did kind of digress there.
What happened with the Navy SEAL? Did you when was that? How old were you?
I was 19. Yeah, I was actually training in college with a guy who's going through what's called an enlisted commissioning program. He was a SEAL Team 2 guy who's becoming an officer. Yep. We trained in the woods. We had a blast. I'd spend 3 or 4 days out in the woods at a time with him, and we worked out together with a group, and I fell in love with that idea. Yep. But my heart was always with flying. Funny enough, I actually had lunch with Brandon Webb. Yeah, that's a little bit. Love the podcast. I had no idea that guy was sailing across the Pacific when he was a kid. Yeah, what a cool story. By the way.
No, frankly, it was similar in that sense of he didn't have the vision of being a SEAL the whole time, but he just from birth was basically on the ocean. So when it came time, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in the ocean. Yeah, it was a great story. Yeah. Nice. All right, so you get out. You said you took a couple year break after college.
Right after college, right after I graduated, about a year and a half or so.
What happened? What was the delay?
it was just some family health issues. And I felt, it's so funny. Like I felt it was not the right time to go. And then it's funny. If you look back at my life, I go through these periods of time where like I need a mission in life. Like even that's why I started the company. It's why I'm, running a company through a pandemic and everything else. And I was so miserable that I didn't join the Navy. I mean, it was, my dad pulled me aside, and he said, look, he's like, why aren't you doing this? Like, oh, well, this happened in our family. What happens if you get sick? He goes, look, when I came over, we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. He goes, you could call me anytime. Like I was worried about him as he got older. He passed away actually. That's 2003. And, and he said to me, I said, look, Mussolini, he used to quote Mussolini, even though he was a villain, and he said, Mussolini once said, I'd rather spend 1 day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. And in your case, I'd rather spend 1 day as an eagle than 100 years as a chicken. And so that was funny. We used to have these talks, and he'd give me that kind of mentorship and advice, and it was great. And and of course, it was the right path for me at the time. And it was just an amazing career too. I mean, look, I had no idea. When you join the military, especially something like the fighter community or SEALs, I'm sure Brandon would say the same thing. What you see online and what you see on movies and stuff, it's so much more involved, right? There's just so much that goes into it. And I'll tell you, like, we all grow up with the idea that we're influenced by the media, right? I mean, I was influenced by Topgun. Yeah. And luckily what I found was that, over the course of my life, even when I started the business, I was influenced by Richard Branson and a few other people. Yeah. You can't try to be those people, and you can't like end up like hoping that you're going to be that person, but life ends up being so much better. Like the military community was just so strong. And the idea of like Topgun, that was cartoonish compared to the idea of what you learn, even though you work, 18, 19 hour days and you're briefing and debriefing, and you spend your time at Topgun, which I went through in 2009, building PowerPoints, literally a lot of my time was building PowerPoint presentations. You learn so much. And by the way, my dog, I've got a German Shepherd, and she's so mad that she's outside. It's here over my shoulder right now, sparking it. But
no, hey, listen, this is the part of working from home. Yeah, everyone's got it.
I know.
No, the funny thing I've seen the new thing is the everybody seems to have the same lawnmower or leaf blower going at the same time every day.
I try to do this outside. It was raining, so I said, let me come inside. But
nice. So you 2001, month before 9/11, you decide you actually enlist. You go, and did you go? You went in as an officer, right?
Right. I went through what's called Officer Candidate School. Yeah. So
when you join, are you immediately like you said, I'm coming in as a pilot, or did you have to go through testing, training? Like how's that work?
Yeah, you have to apply to be a pilot, right? So, and the recruiters are funny, man. Like, there's a lot of people that go into the military not happy about what they get assigned because the recruiter, promises them certain things. The recruiter's like, look, he's like, you don't want to be a pilot. You want to be a backseater because the pilot's the monkey on the stick. The backseater is really the runs the mission. He's trying to convince me. I was like, look, top 2 choices, pilot, pilot, pilot. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. I passed all the tests and everything else. And so I got in as a pilot and went through Officer Candidate School,
And what happens if you don't? Let's say you didn't pass the pilot test. You're still in, like you still have to serve the military.
Yeah. So OCS is interesting because you don't have a commitment until you go in. So you commit as a pilot, right? Yeah. Now, a couple of my buddies, they had health issues or they found something wrong with their eyes during OCS. Right. So they may end up being a backseater or go off to the ship world or whatever, which is fine. It's just for me, that was my goal. Right.
Got it. And you wouldn't have to, if like something came up medically, like your vision or something during that process, you wouldn't have had to.
Not during OCS, but later on, you have to serve some sort of time. Yeah.
Got it. Very cool. And so what's the process then? Like how soon from when you signed up to like when you're actually landing on an aircraft carrier?
Yeah, it's about almost 3 years, like 2.5 years. Okay. Well, I take that back. You land on the aircraft carrier in about a year and a half, but by the time you're flying the gray jets out in deployment, you're looking at 2 or 3 years. But Officer Candidate School is about 13 weeks. Uh-huh. It's boot camp at the time, at least, we had, it's like boot camp for officers. We had, the Marine Corps drill instructor with the Smokey Bear hat. Like you can't, all you see is his mouth, for the first 3 weeks, essentially. And these guys are hilarious, by the way. They should all be stand-up comedians because the stuff that the shit that they throw at you is just too funny. They kept pronouncing, my name wrong. And I said, and he's like, well, how do you pronounce it? I said, it's actually Ceravolo. He goes, no, it's not. Your family's been pronouncing it wrong the entire time. Like he just throws stuff at you. It's just hilarious. And it kind of, it's 13 weeks of academics and physical fitness and things like that, but great experience. And then you go through what's called API, where you learn navigation and other basic, flying stuff. And you go to flight school.
Yeah.
And in flight school, I went to Corpus Christi, Texas. And you go through primary flight school, which is a turboprop airplane, which is a lot of fun. You're learning, formation and aerobatics and the whole 9 yards. And then how well you do there basically decides like what your next steps are. So there's any given time, there's a number of jet slots available. And when I graduated, there were only 3 jet slots across the 3 schools. Wow. And thank God I was number one in my class. So I got the first one. So
how many people were in the class or the 3 classes?
Across the 3 schools, I think it was like 35, 40.
Okay. Wow. So it's
graduated at the same time.
Going to get through.
Yeah. At the time. And then, the Navy's really bad at accounting, by the way. So sometimes they have too many pilots. Other times they don't have enough. So it fluctuates a little bit and it is what it is, but yeah.
Yeah. So you went through that. How long was flight school?
So flight school is about 2.5 years. I went to jet training in Kingsville, and Kingsville is when you start to fly the jet, which is a blast. You land on the carrier the first time, the whole thing. At the time, my father passed away when I was in jet training. So my training was delayed about a month. I was scheduled to go, I think I was supposed to go to the aircraft carrier. And then when he passed away, they kind of pushed me back about a month, And it was a tough time, obviously, because, my dad was the reason I kind of got in. He kept telling me that, I can't wait until you show up in my hometown with a Navy uniform on. He'd watched Officer and Gentleman one too many times. Yeah. And when it's such an odd thing for me because, we spoke almost every day. And when he passed away, it was like his life was ending at the time that mine was beginning. Because that was like my whole field. I mean, if you think about the last 20 years of my life, deploying, Topgun, starting a business, and it was just like, it still bumps me out to this day. We'd never had that overlap, but the squadron was great and went home for 10 days. It was drunk for about 9 of them, came back and they said, look, Rocco was my call sign. Rocco, what do you want to do? I said, put me back in a fucking jet, that's it. And for me, the flying was always a meditation. It's a form of meditation, and I got back in the jet.
Did you fly like pre-Navy? Did you ever get up in a prop, like a 172 or something?
Yeah, I had my licenses, had some flight time, which obviously helps in primary. You had
your license, license. Got it.
Yeah, helps in primary. Doesn't help in jet training because you're not landing 172 on a carrier or dropping bombs, but definitely helps in primary. And so jet training was a blast, though. I mean, you're dropping bombs. You land on the carrier for the first time, and that to me was the big, oh shit moment as you're flying out to the aircraft carrier. You'd been trained up for this and everything else. And you see this boat. And by the way, there's no instructor in the back seat, so no one wants to get in the back with you. And you see this boat and you're like, I got to land on that. You got to be kidding me. It's tiny, So then, I remember my heart rate was going and I was literally thinking to myself, what if I turn around? Can I still join the Air Force? Will they let me do this? I was having this whole internal monologue as I'm flying towards the boat. And then you kind of fall back in your training a little bit, and you come into the break and I'm still second guessing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. And you come into what's called a break. You fly over the top at 250 knots. You turn and you pull G, and you kind of feel G. I'm looking at the boat. It's not getting any bigger. It just looks smaller. I'm like talking to my dad in my head. I'm like, Dad, seriously, you got to help me out. And then by the time I got to the groove, which is where you start to turn, turning on final, if you will, for the ship, you kind of just get settled into just training, the mentality of it's been drilled in your head, ball line up AOA and you fly it and you trap and it's like, holy shit, I cannot believe that's right. So you do that for a couple of days, you do day and night. And funny story really quick. So we were flying off the coast of North Carolina. When you get done, Erik, landing on the ship for the first time, you really feel like you could conquer the world.
Yep.
And I was walking through an airport in South Carolina, or North Carolina rather, Charlotte, and all these guys were looking at this girl, just really pretty girl and everything else, and nobody would go and talk to her. I just walked right up to her, started talking to her. Turns out she was a playmate. At the time, I was on her way to LA for a shoot, and it's I probably wouldn't have done that in a million years, obviously. But you really feel like
you're on top of the world, yeah.
And it never gets easy. I mean, from that first landing to my very last landing on a carrier at night, my legs would still shake. My knees would still shake at the end.
And is that something common across all pilots, like Navy pilots? Is it just it's just that hard?
Yeah. It's if you're not scared of this thing, you're stupid. Something's wrong with you. You know what I mean? Yeah. You got to be scared of it. It's just overcoming that fear.
And how often is there a problem? How often are there accidents or?
It's rare. And it's because the Navy does such a good job weeding out the weak ones. Yeah. And then really training people up. You know, and I always talk to, that's how we set my company up. You know, I mean, look, Navy flying or naval aviation is I think the most complex or the highest risk evolution only compared to space flight and aviation.
Yeah.
But they do it routinely day in and day out.
Right.
You know, so why don't we take that mentality and apply it to a civilian organization where everything is standardized, you train constantly and everybody does it the same way.
Yeah.
And it's a key to success. And I think we as, you know, in the civilian world, you don't see that in small aircraft aviation too much.
No, yeah, but I agree. And so you end up, it sounds like how long were you in the Navy? You went to Top Gun in 2009. When did you end up coming out?
Yeah. So I did 10 years in the Navy and another 3.5, 4 as a reservist. So I did 10 active, another 4 as a reservist. Yeah. I started the company, I was still in the Navy. And then I was trying to balance being a Navy reserve pilot, which was still 6-7 days a month. Down in Key West, Florida, by the way, best kept secret in the Navy.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Down there. Seriously, you check in on day one, you know, you get all your paperwork situated. And day two, you go buy the boat, you know, and that's just like you're spearfishing the weekends. Like I still got buddies of mine that are living down there still. They didn't want to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So I was trying to balance being a reserve pilot down there and starting the company. And as you know, entrepreneurial, I mean, like you're 24/7. And I'll never forget, I was taxiing out. I was at the hold short. I had 3 F-18s on my wing and I was about to take off and do like this training mission. And I was texting my vice president about some FAA thing. And I said, look, you know, I said it earlier when my dad passed away, right? Like aviation for me was always an escape. Yeah. And it was no longer an escape. And I said, look, I got to throw in the towel. And when I did that, you know, the company went through the roof because I was able to focus 100% on it.
Yeah. And so we went to roll back a little bit. Top Gun 2009, is it usual to only spend a couple more years after Top Gun, or like what was there? Because they're investing a lot in you, I'd assume. Yeah, not always. You know, I went through the adversary program, and a lot of the guys that go there end up being reservists. You know, they obviously want you to stay in if you can. At the time, a lot of people were getting out. It's unfortunate, but you know, you give 10 years of your life already. So if you think about it, so like if you want to be a pilot, you have to give them 10 years. And if you want to stay on, if you want to sign up again, they'll give you a 4-year bonus, you know. So I didn't take the 4-year bonus. I got out, just became a reservist. Yeah. Got it. And so did you immediately start the company? Like when did that, did you already have a vision for that? Like when did that come up? I did. So I always wanted to, I had, like I said, when I was a kid, I was going to be a fighter pilot. And then when I retired, which I thought I would retire in like my 50s, I was going to start a company. You know, I love aviation. I was going to be a part of it. And actually in 2009, not too long after Top Gun, I took some leave and I was riding motorcycles through Southern Italy with a buddy of mine. I had actually visited my niece who's in the Air Force up in England. And then with another friend of mine, and we spent some time in Rome, and then I jumped on motorcycles in Sicily, rode through my dad's hometown, the whole thing. But I was reading during that trip, Screw It, Let's Do It, for Richard Branson. Yeah. And, you know, at the end, I was like, screw it, let's start a company, you know, and I made a decision. And man, in the course of 6 months, I sold about everything I had, sold my house, my car, motorcycle, my kayaks, my boat, you know, and bought this like little 1976 4-seat airplane. Yeah. And didn't know what I was getting myself into. I picked it up in Sacramento, California in the middle of winter. And I remember like I was with a Navy buddy of mine and we were flying over the Grand Canyon trying to beat the weather. And we're going really slow because it's an old slow plane. What'd you buy? An old 1976 206, or Cessna 206 on floats. The thing's doing 100 knots, you know what I mean? And so it's like the storm's caught up to us, essentially, cut us off. So I remember looking out the wing. I'm like, is that ice on the wing? And he's like, I don't know. And so I literally opened the window and take my glove off and I grab it. I'm like, yeah, that's ice. We got to set this thing down somewhere. I mean, it was just one of those, you know, but I sunk everything I had in this company. And I was so scared that I was going to, you know, tank it before I even got started. But, you know, we went through a year and a half of trying to get the FAA approvals done. And then we got the FAA approvals in 2011. And so you bought the plane right away and then worked on everything else. Like you had one plane already ready to go kind of thing. Yeah. We got very, very, at the time, the FAA gave us very bad, I would say, direction. And they said, we're not going to look at you until you have the airplane. I'm like, shit. Okay. Now they tell you, well, as long as you have a contract in place, we'll process your application. Right. So I sat on an asset for a year and a half. Yeah. I mean, almost on it too. Yeah. So I literally rode a bicycle to work for 2 years, you know, but were you in Florida at that time? Were you based in Miami or? Yeah, I was in Tampa. I had stationed at CENTCOM in Tampa. I actually worked for General Mattis for a while, which is a former SecDef. And then I moved back to Fort Lauderdale in 2013. Yeah. Got it. Okay. And so you fly this from Sacramento, California, you fly across the country in a 206 on 100 knots. which, it's a bird flies, but it's 100, basically a little over 100 miles an hour.
Mind you, I was flying fighters like up to that point. So I was like, why does it take 45 minutes to get to 11,000 feet? This is insane.
Yeah, exactly.
But
no, definitely. I've got light, but I've got 44 hours. So I've sat up in the 172. Just like it sometimes feels like you're sitting still. You're just like,
yeah, exactly. You're not going anywhere. No, but like, that's funny too. When you talk about fear, like I flew the F-14 over Iraq for 7 months, landing on ships at night. I mean, I landed on Air Base with one engine while I was under mortar fire, the whole thing. Oh, wow. That trip across the country was, I would say, the most scared I've ever been in an airplane. And
was it really that Grand Canyon situation, or what was the scariest?
Yeah, it was that. I think it was a combination of I would say the fear factor of, flying, trying to get that thing back in the wintertime, at the same time that I just invested my entire life savings and decided to get out of the Navy into something that I'm probably going to not even get it back to Fort Lauderdale to start the business. Like it was just the stress, the emotional stress of that trip. I'll never forget it.
Which it's funny, because Brandon Webb and I, a mutual friend, have talked about this too, where this is a Navy SEAL that's been in some real serious combat situations. And he's talked about that his business almost failing and like COVID hitting and things like that, way more stressful than being in a combat situation, which is not what, 100%. Including myself, most civilians would think. You'd be like, you're getting shot at, that there can't be something more stressful. But no, the idea of your business failing for some reason logically doesn't make sense. Biologically, it happens.
Well, you think about it. So, and I can't speak for Brandon's experience, but I'll speak for my own, right? So as a fighter pilot, you first of all, what you're signing up for. I'm going to land on ships at night. I'm going to fly into combat, right? Yeah. Then you are trained really well for that. I follow stoicism, right? I love the stoic mentality of the idea that you accept reality, right? Mm-hmm. So you're trained to accept this reality that you're going into. I'm flying fighters off ships. I'm going into combat. Yep. You are surrounded by a team. That's all like on the same page to win, right? So yes, you have responsibility of the people in the back of your jet, of your wingman, of the people on the ground. You have those responsibilities, but you're also surrounded by an entire team that's all sharing those responsibilities, and then you go to combat, and it's just what you do, and it's scary and it's impactful and everything else, but it's what you've been prepared for. Yep. COVID hitting my business was something that nobody saw coming, right? I didn't see it coming. Yeah. And those 10 days, I remember March 13th was when we finally accepted the reality, right? Friday the 13th, I'll never forget. Yep. And the next 10 days watching, not just, my own personal dreams unravel of the idea, like, wait, I gave up the Navy for this. I sold everything I had. I still haven't recouped any of this. I've got investors, but then watching my employees go through it too. And you're just carrying all of that weight. Yep. And by the way, I can say it today, but I can't walk into the office on Monday, the 16th, right? 16th, and say, hey guys, this is all falling apart because, I have to stay strong for everyone else. Right. And so you carry all of that weight. And for me, that was one of the more difficult periods of time I've had in a very long time.
No. And you were in what's a hyper affected industry. So, I don't know. Did you guys we'll get back to that. But so you get this plane back, you spend a year and a half getting the FAA approval. And I'm curious, because you did just explain, how much stress that was. Going back to the Air Force, what was one of your most stressful times or crazy times flying in combat? Yeah,
there's a few, and they're all. It's so funny, like how, your memory, the hard times tend to fade. Yeah. If you have the right mindset and you still remember all the good times, like even the most stressful times, I remember the good times there. But there was a couple that still stick with me to this day where your hands were tied because of rules of engagement. Uh-huh. And like our job was to support the guys on the ground, right? That was our job. There was no air threat, And I remember we saw a helicopter get shot down, and look, there's two of our fellow servicemen on that chopper, right? Yeah. And we chased, by air, we followed the guys and they went into a mosque. Yeah. And we had strikers. We talked to strikers on, which are the vehicles, the Marines or Army, I think it was, up in Mosul, surrounds the mosque. And so we're like, we got these guys, and they wouldn't let them in. They wouldn't go in because of rules of engagement. So they had to wait for the Iraqi army to show up, which took 2 hours. Yeah. And by the time they showed up, somehow the guys disappeared at the back, and those were 2 Americans that were killed, and those times, like I remember, like it's, we all look back in deployment as a great times, and we have a cruise video showing all the fun times flying and the times like getting hammered in Turkey and everything else in Dubai. But there's these impactful times like that you just never forget. And it's because you felt so helpless.
Yeah.
I think. Right.
Yeah. No,
like I never feared for my life, if that makes sense. Like I felt, secure in my training, in my jets, and my people, and my squadron. It was more the time that you just felt helpless, that you couldn't do your job.
And do you think any of that, I mean, it sounds like you at a young age, you wanted to be an entrepreneur too, but do you think that drove entrepreneurship? Because there is a little less helplessness in entrepreneurship. Now, what you said, there's other stressors, but it's always on you, meaning the decision's always on you too.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it, man. That's one of the reasons why I love, the idea of being an entrepreneur. And if I was to ever sell this company, I'd probably do something else, simply because like you control your own destiny, right? Like you do. Yeah. I mean, you put money in the stock market, it's still a gamble, right?
Right.
But you put 100%. Money in yourself. That's like, I know that I can drive it. And I'll tell you, that goes back to the idea of stoicism, or if you listen to Jocko Willink or anything like that, I mean, it's so funny. All those philosophies, by the way, even Catholicism, Judaism, like all the religions, they all follow the same premise, which is like, you have free will.
Yep.
Right. And if you don't like something, like that's the reality. So you got to accept the reality. If you don't like it, you can't change reality. You could change your next move. Right.
Yep.
And impact it that way. And that's why I love being an entrepreneur, because I can impact it. Like I can impact it. There's I jump out of airplanes, right? So there's an old joke, like, your chute doesn't open, you pull the reserve. Right. But if you pull the reserve and it doesn't open, you keep yanking on that thing, like you're fighting it until you hit the ground. Like, and that's the mentality of the entrepreneur, right? You're going to go down swinging no matter what.
Exactly.
Right? You can't rely on anyone else. No one's going to come bail you out,
Yep.
And it's that challenge, I think, is what attracts me to it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so getting back to this, so you go all in with your own money for a year and a half. Did you have investors in the beginning, or did you just do it literally yourself?
It's so funny, like no bank, I mean, look, it was the tail end of a recession, right? This is 2009, 2010. And so all the banks pretty much laughed at me. Every single one. I was like, you're kidding, right? So you're starting an airline in a recession. Good luck. B, who are you? You're a Navy pilot. You don't have a lot of wealth behind you, whatever else. So I literally, I had a bank laugh at me, and I kid you not. And I was very fortunate to meet a gentleman at a wedding who owned a small bank, and he was big in aviation. And I kind of pitched him on my idea. And his bank, he gave me the loan for the first airplane, and we're going to be here without him. And it's so funny, man, like just to anchor on that for a second, like I'm sure you see this too. There are people like throughout the last 10 years, I would say, that just, you don't have anything to give them, but they just believe in you, whether it's, and they'll give you whether it's mentorship or an investment or just point you in the right direction. And I am, 100% thankful and like loyal to those. So another great example was my insurance guy. So at the time I couldn't even get insurance, for an airline. And I met this guy, and we became very close friends. He's 20 years older than me. We actually just went to Skip Barber and race cars last weekend in Austin, Formula One cars, Dakota, not Formula 4 rather. And, but at the time, like nobody would give me their, insurance business. So now all of the insurance business, all the big companies have reached out to me and trying to get my business. And I tell them all the same thing. I'm like, look, I am loyal, 100% loyal to this guy, because he gave me a shot when all of you guys told me to F off, basically, and without, it's funny, like entrepreneurs always get the focus, right? But we're here because I think we were able to bring people together, right? It's all about the team that you build, like, especially in terms of mentorship and things like that. So anyway, so I was able to get a loan from that gentleman to help buy the first airplane and the parts. And then, so we started flying in March of 2011. With that one little airplane, and we flew that airplane everywhere. I mean, it was in the Keys, it was in the Bahamas, it was in Tampa, it was doing flights everywhere, and people thought we had a fleet of these things, and I would just fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and
I'm curious, how many hours did you put on that thing?
Oh, man, I don't remember. We did 110,000 in revenue first year.
All right.
Yeah, not bad.
Was that enough? I mean, not enough to really pay yourself, but enough to cover the bills. Not even.
No, it was so funny. So my CEO, Nick Belcher, who's actually my first employee, he came down on a handshake. He moved to Key West with his wife, and I went to Tampa. I thought I was going to Afghanistan at the time. Like literally thought I was taking a job in Afghanistan because I had to spend one more year in the Navy, and I ended up going to, we call it Tampa-stan. It's like a great deal. So I was just on the other side of the state. But he moved down, and he basically was the first pilot for the plane. And at the time I couldn't pay him. So I was making $30,000 a year as a Navy reservist, and I was supporting myself, him, and his wife.
Wow.
My fiance at the time. Yep. On $30,000 a year. I mean, it's 4 adults and 30. It was a rough couple of years, obviously. Yep. But so in 2012 we added the bigger airplane, the Caravan. Mm-hmm. And that was one of those build it, they will come. We saw the demand for it. There was casinos that were opening up, and we said, hey, we could bring this business. They said, when can you launch? I said September of next year, and I didn't have the airplane yet, but here we are, right? We sat on an asset for 8 months, burning cash, because it took 8 months for the FAA to approve that airplane. Uh-huh. But in 2013 we launched the Caravan service, and we were able to attract some strong investors in 2014. So my partners now, a couple of guys, former Goldman Sachs partners. One of them sits on the board at Delta, also sits on the board at Virgin Galactic, which is kind of cool, by the way. And with these guys on board and the connections that they brought, I mean, we grew the company from 2 airplanes to where we are today, which I don't like to use 2020 numbers, but 2019, we flew 45,000 people in 8 countries, on these little seaplanes, if you will. And
you got a former sort of not mentor, but inspiration as an investor, right?
Sorry?
You had some of your you raised a bunch of money in that time at that point too, right?
Yeah, not a bunch, but enough.
Okay.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not a bunch. But in 2014, we raised a decent amount. In 2017, we brought another small partner on. It was actually a foreign company too that's looking at it. So our model is, the way I've shifted the model. We went from flying celebrities to the islands to building a dispatch, for lack of a better term, what do you call it? Basically, we standardize how we operate, like McDonald's. Uh-huh. And I hate to use that term, but basically we can stick this thing down in just about any region that has an archipelago, or I would say places like Boston where you have an urban mobility issue, right? Yeah. So there's a foreign company that invested because we were helping them set up in this is in Asia. And we've been since then actually kind of moving forward with that idea of we can basically solve an airlift problem for a country. So you take, if you're familiar with the Maldives, right? Yeah, it's an archipelago. Seaplanes is what really connected the entire country. It used to be an old fishing village. Now it's the number one archipelago, luxury destination in the world, if you will. Yeah. Bahamas has 700 islands. We have operations throughout the Caribbean. So we're launching these different operations in these different regions. Yeah. But again, back to the whole, how do you land on a carrier? You standardize and train it. We've standardized how we operate. We can pick it up and stick it down just about anywhere. And that's been kind of our business model.
You said at this point, you're about 8 different countries. Right.
We are operating into 8 different countries. We are basing airplanes in right now 3 countries.
Okay.
But operating into the other neighboring countries as well.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. And so 2019, you said 45,000 different passengers, et cetera. What ended up happening with COVID? How did that actually affect things?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, March was, everybody was scared. Everybody shut down, so we saw the writing on the wall. So we had to make some really tough decisions by the end of March. Mm-hmm. And we built the timeline. Like I'm a big believer, look, we were saying it earlier, right? This isn't going to last forever. We just didn't know how long it was going to last, right? Yep. So we built the timeline to get us to December back in March. And the timeline was basically, we went through a period of like a triage, if you will. Imagine an injury, right? Mm-hmm. We triaged, we stopped the bleeding, we performed some surgery in the company. Yep. That period of time, March, April, was very eye-opening for me and for our exec team, because we actually found a lot of inefficiencies in our company. So think about the opportunity to watch your business on slow motion and say, well, I don't like hit pause. I don't like that. Let's pull that out. Right. Yep. And so we actually were able to shave, it was about 38% of costs out of our business, a normal operating business. Yeah. Because, like any small entrepreneurial company, we were growing so fast. We were growing about 34% year over year. Yep. We got fat. Right? You start
throwing shit at things. You say, let's just hire 3 more people there.
Yeah, we got fat. So that was very helpful, I would say, for the company, that period of time. Yep. And so we kind of built a recovery plan in June with the idea that July there was going to be some recovery. And there was. We had a very strong July, and then we fell off a cliff again in August, right? Got it. So since August, we've been kind of reshuffling the company. I actually made some great COVID hires. I hired a new VP of Ops and a VP of Sales. VP of Ops came to us from American Airlines. So we were able to hire people we couldn't hire for COVID. Yeah. And we're professionalizing the business, and we're in the process of relaunch in December. So we've had a pretty strong December. I was able to land some big contracts the last couple of weeks, actually.
Great.
And we're going to look at another slow period of time in most likely January, February. Mm-hmm. And then we're either going to see a recovery in March or July.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, I think the industry as a whole, this shift in travel has benefited us, right? People want to fly the leisure routes. They want to fly to these remote areas. They want to fly private. So it's funny, the demand is there, right? And we see it. We see COVID as, I think we're going to look back at COVID as, although it's going to be a difficult time for our company, it'll be one of the pivotal points in our company where we actually were able to now, get the company to the next level.
When I think that I've seen that with a lot of companies, like another friend that owned a chain of gyms across Canada and had to shut them down and pivoted to virtual training and has built an entire virtual platform now that's probably going to be one of the biggest virtual training platform, like fitness training platforms, period. He's made millions of dollars online and, without having these brick and mortar places where he's rented chain of gyms for 20 years. Now he's got this huge business that has no geographic limitation, no overhead. Like it's really interesting to see, kind of like what you said about cutting costs and about all the things that forced entrepreneurs to do, that if you kind of are, as I've heard the term used, a wartime leader, where it's like, we're going to battle, we're going to figure this out. Right. Those people did well, pretty much regardless of industry, because it opened up so many new opportunities. And maybe, as you just said, maybe 2020 isn't going to be a great year on paper, but it's going to be a pivotal point that going forward, it makes your company so much stronger. Because again, with recovery in the next 3 to 6 months, which I agree with, I think that timeline makes sense for what I'm saying too, you're going to have a massive reduction in costs and the revenue is going to be coming back strong. And people seem to be much more driven to these private flights, these remote destinations, that kind of thing. I agree. So super interesting.
Yeah. I think, we have a very strong plan for 2021 post recovery and for the next couple of years after that. So look, it's an exciting time and it's tough to say, the Catholic guilt in me, it's tough to say it's exciting because there's a lot of people that are struggling right now. Right. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that not everybody's going to be doing well during the next, couple of years. But as far as my company's concerned, I think we have a really strong plan in place and we'll be able to take advantage of it.
100%. And so last couple of questions for me. One, what's next? You talked about the plan, but what is your vision for this? How big do you want to go with it? Is it to build it for a few years and sell it? What do you think is coming next for you?
Yeah, I think, so we have this plan, to grow the company. And again, by using that franchise mentality where we're sticking the company down different regions. And we've also launched an air concierge business. So if you're Necker Island or, pick your luxury resort, one of the challenges everyone has is how do I get there? And one of the challenges that the managers and the salespeople on those resorts have is like trying to figure out how you're going to get to that resort. So we're trying to take that off people's hands, which is great because we're a wonderful last mile provider, but we have some great partners in terms of major airlines as well as private jet companies to get you as close as possible, and we'll take you the last mile. So that model, I think, is a great expansion plan for us because as we launch these different airlines in these different regions, also partnering with the resorts to ensure that we have, a flow of traffic coming in is good. And look, we see this opportunity around the world. I think anywhere around the globe that there's a body of water and a transportation challenge, we can put this company there. And then fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, maybe there's the possibility to electrify the entire fleet. Yeah. Which is extremely exciting right now. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years because of battery technology, but there's a big shift towards that. And we definitely think that, again, putting this route structure in place is a great start to ensuring that these countries can then electrify their transportation needs in the next 5, 6 years. So those are some of the conversations we're having,
That's amazing.
And it's an exciting time, for me personally. Man, look, like I said earlier, like I need to know that I have a purpose and a challenge. And as long as we're continuing to move in that direction, I feel like I have a purpose and a challenge. And I think we've built the culture of the company to think that way. Great example really quick is we do, every year there's a hurricane, we launch hurricane relief. And last year, when you think about the ability to pivot, and I'm very proud of my team for this, is when Hurricane Dorian hit the northern Bahamas, this is right before we met out in Palm Springs, right? This is October, end of September. We overnight, we partnered with a company called Blue Tide Marine, former Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6 guys, actually. We partnered with Delta, we partnered with Wheels Up, and my little company led this international, multi-company organization. And in 24 hours, we were the first ones on the ground that were not, the military, for example, in Northern Bahamas. And in 10 days, we evacuated 900 people and carried 250,000 pounds of cargo, to the most remote areas of the Northern Bahamas that were just devastated by Hurricane Dorian. So, and I think my entire company kind of, fits that culture, which is just fantastic. So we're going to continue to move, through our plan and keep going after these exciting things. And for me personally, who knows, man? I may, maybe around in 20 years flying seaplanes. I don't know.
I was going to ask, are you still flying much yourself?
No, I gave it up in 2014 because, to focus on the business. I think I'm better doing these types of things. I'm better, meeting with prime ministers and working with them on their airlift strategy, but I miss it like crazy, and COVID was pivotal for me because I went through, I think, a period of depression, not too long ago, where I started really second guessing why I left the Navy, why I left, the things that I love to do. And it's not because of COVID. Like I'll deal with COVID, I'll work through it. It was more of just my life's choices, and I was able to fall back on stoicism and think about it. Like you can't, look, whatever decisions you made yesterday, it doesn't matter, right? It's where you are today. So you can't look back. And there's a great Marcus Aurelius quote. I actually posted this morning and I'm going to bastardize it, but pretty much it says, like you should live your life like you died. And as a dead man, take every day forward as a bonus and basically love the hand that fate dealt you and play it as your own, right? What a great quote. Yeah. So here we are, right? Here I am running an airline and I left the Navy and I don't get to fly anymore. I don't have those passions, but I can fill those with, driving Formula 4 cars around Coda every once in a while.
Well, and just to be real, like with that mindset, I think you can live happier because you also feel like you have that control and that you made that choice. Like, I think a lot of people give away that power of will that they're like, oh, I'm stuck. And like for you, you could turn this, like you piss a couple of people off, but you could stop tomorrow and go back to flying. And there's cost to that, but still you could do that. So knowing that you're making this choice, I think helps a lot. So
I agree. And
on that note, what would be your advice to, a young person looking to pursue their dreams, someone, not even young person, any age that's, whether they're feeling stuck or they're just trying to figure out how to get to their dreams, what would be that one thing that you think drives?
Yeah, it's funny. I get that question a lot about, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. What do you think? I'm like, well, what's your passion, right? Like you have to have a passion and a purpose if you want to be an entrepreneur, right? So, what is your dream? Is your dream to make a lot of money? Well, find something that'll make a lot of money because sometimes, if I like flying airplanes, you can always make money in aviation, right? Is your passion helping people, right? Maybe that's a way to fulfill your dreams. But I think, and I tell everyone this, like find what your passion is, find a mission for yourself. And maybe your mission is taking care of your own family. And if you could take care of your family by making a lot of money at Goldman Sachs, then go work for someone else and make a lot of money so you can take care of your family. But, that's how I look at it. I think a lot of times people, they say, I want to be an entrepreneur without really understanding what it means.
Yep.
And it really comes down to like, what tickles you? Like, what's your mission? And we have a lot of depression in veterans, right? The PTSD, and a lot of that comes from just not knowing what your purpose is. So I think anybody who's trying to figure that out right now, especially during COVID, this is going to pass. Like it's going to be over and you're going to look back at this time as like, it was just a bump in the road. So now is a great time for you to take a step back and say, like, really what makes me happy?
Yeah.
Right. What makes me happy? And then go for it. Like, and don't listen to what anyone else tells you.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you for being on HawkeTalk. This has been awesome.
It was great, man. Really excited to see you again and talk to you. So thanks for having me.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Hawke Media Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.